Before we move on to the last type of factor, there is sort of a special case when you factor certain polynomials. And we've already learned how to factor ones that look like example 1, A and B. So let's see if we can remember how to factor these two types. X squared plus 6x plus 9. What should I write first as part of my factoring? First of all, how many terms are in it? 3. So it's a trinomial. Trinomial always factors do what? Two binomials or two sets of parentheses. Whoa. Okay. This one doesn't have a number in front of the x squared. So what am I going to put here?
X squared.
X squared. X. Let's do this. Boy, now it's easy. X and X. How do I find the numbers? Know this. Add up to 6, sum of 6, and what two numbers fit that? 3 and 3, positive or negative? So positive 3 and positive 3. What do you notice about the two factors? They're identical. Is there a bit of an easier way I could write it? X plus 3 squared. Okay. This one is a trinomial, x squared, but it's got a number in front. What am I going to write to start? Two sets of parentheses. Do I just put x and x, or do I got to do, no, I got to do something different here. Let's do 5x and 5x. Because we're going to have to do a little rainbow here to figure it out. All right? What am I going to put in for the numbers? They got to multiply the 4, but notice there's a negative in the middle here. That should tell you what to pick. Negative 2 times positive 2 is not positive 4. Negative 2 times, all I'm hearing is negative.
Negative 2.
Thank you. Yes. Negative 2 times negative 2. I know that these work. Now I got to check this, right? I got to do the rainbow. What's 5 times negative, 5x times negative 2? Negative 10x. Inside, what's negative 2 times 5x? And when I put those together, I get? So I get it right. Notice again, the two factors we got were identical. So I could even write it a little bit simpler. Parentheses 5x minus 2 squared. These trinomials have a special name when they can factor to two identical binomials. Okay? And we actually call them perfect square trinomials, or perfect square trinomial. Because think about when we talked last year and earlier this year about what's a perfect square. It's something that you can get to by multiplying something else by itself. So 25 is a perfect square because you can get to it by doing 5 times 5. 49 is a perfect square because you can get to it by doing 7 times 7. This is a perfect square trinomial because you can get to it by doing x plus 3 combined to itself. Okay? It's not a new type of factoring, it's just a special case, that's all. Okay, let's look at the final case, or the final type of factoring. And this type of factoring is called a difference of squares. And how do you recognize a difference of squares? It's exactly as the phrase sounds. Okay? Two perfect squares separated by subtractions. Because difference means subtraction. And difference of squares means the subtraction of two perfect squares. How do we factor a difference of squares? Always do binomials. One of the binomials will be plus, the other one will be minus. And how do I find the terms inside? Note. What are they in the vents? How come we can still hear them? A squared equals A times A, right? B squared equals B times B. So let's look at the first one. This one's actually pretty easy to pick up on. Is this a perfect square? Can I get to it by multiplying something by itself? X times X. Is this a perfect square? Because 5 times 5. Is it a difference? Yes. So this is a difference of squares. Always two terms. Two binomials, automatically. Plus and minus, automatically. And then these two terms are what multiply to get this, so x and x. And or the square root of x squared. And these two terms are the square root of 25, 5 and 5. That's it. Because watch what happens when you multiply it through. Like if you were to multiply it through, we get x times x, which is x squared. X times minus 5, which is minus 5x. 5 times x, which is plus 5x. And 5 times minus 5, which is minus 25. Those cancel out, and we're left with x squared minus 25. When you multiply things that look like this, they're almost the same, except one is plus and one is minus. The two middle terms will always cancel out. Always. So that's why we can factor it this way. So what about this one? Again, two sets of parentheses, plus minus. And what goes in here? Well, what times itself gives you 16x squared? So 4x and 4x. And what times itself gives us 49y squared? And we're done. Okay. Okay, just to wrap up, because did I tell you the next test was Monday, November 25th? Yeah. Well, 9. So Monday and Thursday next week, because we don't have class Wednesday, or sorry, no, we have Monday. Oh, I could have the test next Thursday, couldn't I? Right, so I see you guys Monday, Wednesday, Thursday next week. And you know what? I think what I'll do is I'm going to do 2.6, but I'm not going to put it on the test. So I'm going to take one of the tests because 2.6 is not a new type of factoring. It's kind of combination factoring. Okay. Okay, I'll deal with it that way. Anyway, that's besides.
Okay, Thursday or Monday?
Monday.
Okay.
Okay. So to summarize, 4 types of factoring. And if you notice, in the answer keys, in the exercises, I always put beside the factoring question what kind it is. It might be helpful to do that. Do you remember what we called the first type? Very first one we did. Yep, GCF. That's when we found the GCF. So we found the GCF. And then the other factor we found by dividing and putting it in parentheses. Right? The next type was an x squared trinomial. What did that look like? Always 2 sets. Always x and x. And then how did we find the numbers? Sum of middle. Product of n. Then we threw a number in front of the x squared trinomial, so we got an 8x squared trinomial. Again, it's going to be 2 sets of parentheses. But that's where we did the little rainbow thing, right? We put in guesses and guesses and then did the rainbow to check it. Rainbow to check middle term. And then finally was the one we learned today, difference of squares. Difference of squares will also go to 2 binomials. But we know that the first one will have plus. It doesn't matter, it could be minus plus. But the first, each one has a plus, or sorry, one has a plus and one has a minus. Okay. So those are the 4 types. So I would like to spend, I know we've got some time next week, but I'd like to spend some time sort of giving you a mix so that you can recognize what it is and know how to factor it. Okay. But in the meantime, 2.4 and 2.5 should be completed by Monday. And I want to check your exercises on Monday, please. Okay.